Shalom Aleichem Rabotai, and a happy Hanukkah. Mishnah Yomi is in the 10th parak of Shabbat at Mishnah Vav. Hanotel tzipornov zo bezo. Somebody removes his fingernail by basically pushing one onto the other to cut it off. Obeshinav, or bites it off in his teeth. Bechen sairo, so too with his hair. The Bartner says here that he pulls out a hair with his hand. Ken sfamo, or his mustache, ken shidikono, or his beard, vechen, and also hagodelet. Godelet is like braiding hair. Ken a kochelet. Kochelet is applying kahol, which is eyeshadow. Ken a poseket, and also poseket is dividing hair. Rabbi Eliezer mechayev. Rabbi Eliezer says these actions are chayev. They're considered a tolda of a malacha. The applying eyeshadow is kotevet, like writing, though she's writing with eyeshadow instead of writing letters. And godel and poseket, these are boneh. And the removing of hair would be gozes, like shearing. So he says these are toldot of malacha, even though they don't resemble the malacha so closely. The Chachamim say they're asr because of shvut, because of a rabbinical decree that they're close to a malacha, but the other sages say these aren't really a tolda, they're not really a malacha, because they're not really done the same way or the same situation as an actual malacha, so they're not a tolda. You understand, like applying eyeshadow, it's something like writing, but not really, according to the sages. Mishnah Vav continues, a tolish me'atzitz nakuv chayev. Baruch Hashem Rabbosai, welcome back to Atzitz Nakuv land, which we talked about in Zerayim many times. That's the famous flower pot with a hole in it. It's the holy flower pot, has a nekev, has a hole in the bottom through which it draws sustenance from the earth itself. So here, someone is tolish, he's picking a flower or a plant from a perforated flower pot. He is chayev, he is doing an actual malacha of kotzer, of reaping. V'she'eno nakuv, potter. And if the flower pot had no hole, he's doing the exact same thing, but the flower pot had no connection to the ground itself, he'd be potter. Rabbi Shimon potter b'zeh b'zeh. Rabbi Shimon says he's potter in both cases, because it's not so close to Ketzira, so you can't be Chayev Skila. Halacha is not like Rabbi Shimon. So Baruch Hashem Rabbosai, we're on to chapter 11. We've mentioned it before that it's all about Reshuyot, different domains on Shabbos, which was the topic of the very first Mishnah in Shabbos, and one that we've come back to many times, and the Gemara comes back to many times in our study of Shabbat. And of course, seeing as it's the first day of Hanukkah, it makes sense to talk about different Reshuyot, because one of the big things that the Greeks did to the temple was break down the walls and the divisions. Their shita, you understand, was all about equality, that everyone has to be equal no matter what. And it's a beautiful idea, but it's not an appropriate idea for the Holy Temple. The Holy Temple has Reshuyot, has different areas for different kinds of people, where the different kinds of people can go and others cannot. So there's a big concept in your life. You need to make reshuyot, you need to make divisions, you need to have, certain things in certain areas for certain people. Good. So chapter 11, the first Mishnah, Hazurik, someone who throws Mershuta Yachid Lershut Rabim, from the private domain to a public domain, Reshut Rabim Lershut Yachid Chayev, or vice versa. He's doing a malacha, he's doing hotzah, and he's chayev. Now here the Bartner has in Arichos, he has a long explanation about what is a domain. We're going to summarize that a Reshut Rabim is minimum size, 4x4 tefachim, minimum height, 10 tefachim. It has some sort of wall or demarcation or raised area, lowered area, and the airspace, this is going to become important later, the airspace of Reshut Yachid goes all the way up, which is not the same as Reshus Rabim. Reshus Rabim has an airspace of 10 tefachim, but no higher. The Bartner here brings the Gemara's explanation of Reshus Rabim is these wide thoroughfares and highways, and they're 16 amo wide, there's no roof. And there is an opinion also, Shetzarich Nami, Shiu Bokim Behem Shishim Ribu B'chol Yom Kedigle Midbar. So some sources say that a Reshus Rabim Deraisa, a biblical public domain, also needs to have 600,000 people passing through, like the camp in the Midbar, like the Jewish camp had 600,000 people there. The Bartner also mentioned there's something called a makom patur, a place which is patur. It's like a very small place. It's like less than 4 tfachim, and so it's not big enough to be a reshut hayachid, and it's less than 3 tfachim. So like it's like a shtickle thing, sitting in the street. You can imagine maybe a small fire hydrant or something like this, a really small thing. He also mentions the Carmelites. Carmelites is like Carmel. It's like a neutral area, and it's an enclosure with walls less than 10 tefachim tall, or a ditch similar to this, or a mavui, which is the famous alleyway that we discuss in Eruvin, or something like the Yam, the ocean, or kind of an open area that's not a Rishus Harabim. So now that we know about the airspace above the Rishus Harabim, the Mishnah continues, Mershut hayachid l'rshut hayachid. So what if he's throwing, and he's throwing from one enclosed yard, and he's throwing across the street to another enclosed yard? Reshut harabim be'emtza, but there's actually a public domain, a reshut harabim, in the middle between where he's throwing and where the item is landing. Rabbi Akiva mechayev. Rabbi Akiva says he's chayev. Chamim potrim, but the sages say he's potter. Rabbi Akiva says he's chayev because Bartner explains from the Gemara, it's as if it's resting in the airspace of Rishus Harabim. And again, this is only when the throwing is happening within 10 amot of the ground. If it's above that, it's considered makom patur, it's considered exempted area, and everyone would agree that he's patur. Shkoyach Rabotai, Chag Sameach, Happy Hanukkah.